Hi everybody, today we're going to be talking about financial aid, which is really important if you're going to college or even a training program after high school, because they tend to be very expensive. So first of all, when you're applying for financial aid, you need to apply for admission first and also then apply for financial aid. Complete all the required forms, make sure you have everything filled out and submitted. That would include the FAFSA. The profile could possibly be something you have to fill out. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. And then apply for scholarships and apply for grants. Those would be free money that you'd be able to get and would take down the cost that you'd actually have to pay. So let's talk about the FAFSA first. The FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. It is something that you have to fill out every year that you're planning on going to school. And when you fill it out, you include every college that you apply for on the form so that they will send your information to that school. It collects demographic information about you. It also collects financial information. And so you're going to use your family's tax information to fill out that form. It's going to determine what they call the expected family contribution, which basically means it's what the government thinks you and your family can pay for your education. And it determines any eligibility for not only federal and state aid, but most schools, it's the aid that they are going to be handing out as well. It used to be that the FAFSA would open January 1st. And so on January 1st, you'd have to wait for all your tax information to get to you. You'd have to file your taxes, and then you could fill out the FAFSA. They have, within the last few years, decided to change that deadline, so it's now October 1st. So the taxes your family submits in April, you'll use that to fill out your FAFSA in October. So it's already done. So on October 1st, you could log in, fill it all out, and get it sent in right away. There's no waiting period like there used to be. And that gets you your financial information sooner, so you can make a decision sooner. All right, so need-based aid is awarded if you have financial need. And so you have to meet the criteria for financially for getting that aid. When you're looking at what the FAFSA determines, they figure out that expected family contribution. The school is going to use that to figure out what your financial need would be. So they take the cost of attendance. They subtract out what the government says you and your family can contribute to your education. That expected family contribution is not going to change from school to school. What will change is how much of the financial need they will be able to or willing to meet. And also the cost of attendance. So that financial need might be greater if the cost of attendance is greater. So when the school determines your eligibility, they get that information from the FAFSA. They're going to look at that information and decide what aid you're eligible for. Once they figure out your financial aid package, they're going to send you what's called an award letter. And that award letter is going to go through and tell you all of the different types of aid, all the scholarships, everything, all the loans, everything that they can offer you. They may request more information. Some schools will want more information to be able to make a better decision. At very least, they're going to want you to sign and return the award letter. So basically saying that you agree to accept all the financial aid they're offering. You do not have to accept all the aid. So that's part of that process of saying, yes, I want. Obviously, you're going to want the scholarships. You may or may not want all of the loans that go with it. But make sure you meet deadlines. Usually with schools, they're going to give out the financial aid packages to everybody who applied to them. They know that not everybody who applied will actually end up going to their school. So they give out more aid at the beginning than they actually have. If you don't meet the deadlines, they're going to assume you're not going to that school, and they're going to give that aid to the people who have committed to the school. And so that aid that you have been offered if you miss the deadline, may be gone. So be careful to watch for those deadlines. All right, so the profile is a form that is sometimes required by some schools. The FAFSA, when you fill it out, it's free, but the profile has a cost to it. And so there's only a few schools that use it, but the ones that are using it want more financial information about your family to get a better picture of what your family's situation is. And so hopefully they can make more informed decisions to distribute the financial aid that they have. It tends to ask more in-depth questions about your assets as a family, your income, your situation, your financial history, so that they get that full picture. But check with your school to see if it's required. If it's not required, there's no point in filling it out because nobody's even going to look at it. So your types of financial aid, you'd have scholarships. You also have grants, both of which you do not have to pay back. So definitely good. You have the student loans, and you have work-study programs. And so all of those things will be outlined on your financial aid award letter. Let's talk about scholarships first. They can be based on merit, so things you can do, sports scholarships, academic scholarships, or it could be based on need, that you have your family has a financial need and needs help paying for school. You don't have to pay it back, which is very good. So when you're applying, things to think about, make sure you're actually qualified. I've heard of a couple people who've applied to scholarships and they weren't qualified and they were given them because nobody else applied. But I would focus more on the scholarships that you apply for, that you're qualified for, because you're more likely to get those. I wouldn't spend a lot of time looking at scholarships just because, well, maybe nobody else will apply. Your application, if you're not qualified, is going to be one of the first to be thrown out. And if you're the only one that applies, they still may not give you the scholarship because you're not qualified for it. Read the directions carefully. Sometimes that's another one that they use to kind of screen out people. If you didn't follow directions, you may not get the scholarship. And make sure you fill in very neatly. Your teachers might try to figure out what your handwriting is and decipher what you're saying. Scholarships probably are not. Include all the necessary information. Sometimes they want to have your transcripts or letters of recommendation, or they may want essays to go along with it. So whatever is supposed to be included with the form, make sure you have that finished and submitted on time as well. Come up with this plan. An easy way to get to scholarships, sometimes people keep putting it off, is to somehow come up with a plan that you can stick to. So maybe every Saturday morning you're going to spend an hour on scholarships. If you're setting aside that time, you might be more likely to actually look at filling out those forms and looking for scholarships. And I'll be posting some links to some scholarship search sites that may be helpful too. You really have to let yourself shine. You're going to fill those out a lot like a job application. You have to kind of sell yourself. Why should this person give you this scholarship money? And have somebody look over your application. It should be a really good copy before you submit it. Make sure everything is formal. And again, like a job application, you want everything written out and explained very clearly. So some sources of scholarships. Guidance counselors are a great source because they tend to have not only local scholarships, but get some word of different scholarships that you might be able to apply for. Financial aid office of the school you're going to, they again may have some scholarship routes that you might be able to look into. Your employer or your parent's employer. Sometimes employers have things set up for children of their employees that are going to college, or if you are employed, maybe they have scholarships available as well. Clubs or organizations that you're involved in, if you're in 4-H or FFA, those types of clubs tend to have scholarships that you could apply for. Affiliations might be church affiliations, it might be clubs that your parents are in, things like that you could possibly apply for scholarships through those types of affiliations. And then look at your potential major. There are scholarships out there for people going into the medical field. There's scholarships out there for people going into teaching. There's scholarships out there for a lot of different majors. And sometimes it's just looking for those. Because you're going into this major, you could qualify for a scholarship. And there's crazy scholarships out there too. Things with being left-handed, or lots of things. You just have to be willing to look for them. Grants are another financial aid that's free money. You don't have to pay it back. They tend to be linked in with the government, and I'll be posting a financial aid fact sheet that gives some of the federal grants that are out there. Loans are pretty much something that a lot of people are going to have to take out to help pay for school. But there are a lot of options. You can go to a private institution, but a lot of times it is better to go through the federal government because they keep interest rates low. They have some benefits to students to try to make it affordable to be able to take out loans and go to school and get an education. Most student loans have a low interest rate, again, to make it affordable. And I think the government is constantly taking that into consideration of trying to keep interest rates low. Payments are deferred while you're in school. That probably isn't the same if you're going to a private institution. If you're going to a bank, a lot of times once you take the loan out, they want to see that you're starting to pay it back. Whereas federal student loans, while you're a student, you don't have to make payments on that loan at all. Loans are available to the student and to the parent. And you start repaying those 6 months after you graduate. So your graduation present is a lovely paper that tells you how much you now owe after you've finished your education. Okay, so the federal student loans, and we're going to start from the highest interest rate and work our way down to the lowest interest rate. Highest interest rate is the PLUS loan, and that's for parents. So that's probably why they consider it to be the higher interest rate that parents might be able to afford to pay a little bit more. If you go on to graduate school, so you're going on to get a master's or a doctoral degree, you would also qualify for a PLUS loan. It is unsubsidized, so that means that you pay all of the interest that builds up while you're in school. So it will be there for you. That'll be added to the cost of how much you actually borrowed when you start paying it back. You have the unsubsidized Stafford loan. For this one, financial need is not required, so any student going into college, whether you have financial need or not, can get an unsubsidized Stafford loan. Again, you're responsible for all interest costs, so that interest that while you're in school will be added to the amount you borrowed, and then you'll start paying that back 6 months after you graduate. If you have financial need, you may be offered what's called a subsidized Stafford loan. This is reserved for people who have more financial need. The benefit of that is when you're talking about a subsidized loan, that means that while you're in school, the U.S. Department of Education will pay your interest on that loan for you. So when you graduate, all you have that's sitting there waiting for you is the amount of money that you borrowed. The government will also pay for your interest while you're in grace periods or deferment periods, so that 6 months after you graduate until you start paying it, it's paid for you. If you have to defer your loan for any reason, it would be paid for then. And then the last type of federal loan is a Perkins loan, and that is also subsidized, so you don't have the interest will be paid for you while you're in school. It is reserved for people who have the most financial need. It does have the lowest interest rate. And what's different about those is this loan is the other ones, when you start paying it back, you're going to be paying it back to some big loan company that you've probably heard of. The Perkins loan, the government gives the money to the college that you go to, and they become your lender. So when you start paying it back, you're actually writing a check to that school to help pay back your loan. Work study programs is your last type of financial aid, and it allows students to earn money while they're in school to help pay for educational expenses. And so you might have a job in the cafeteria, or cleaning a dorm, or Maybe you're working in the admissions office or in the computer lab or in the library. Sometimes you have a lot of different options. And I would probably say as an upperclassman, you might be able to find it more of those other options to find maybe a better job on campus. And like I said, it's supposed to be used for educational expenses. The eligibility is determined by the FAFSA, so you have to fill out the FAFSA to be able to get that on-campus job. And it is administered by the school, so they give you your paycheck, they assign jobs, they do all of those things, but the government does give them money towards paying your wages. So that's all for financial aid. If you have questions, don't be afraid to email me and ask. And there's a lot of resources that I'll be posting to help with the financial aid questions you might be having. When you're a senior, you will be able to go to financial aid nights and be able to get help with your filling out your FAFSA and answer questions that way too. So again, if you have questions, email me.